Ian Vasquez, when people in the big metropolitan areas near the border, when you turn on television in Houston, San Antonio, Phoenix, Los Angeles, San Diego, it's panicky because they're waiting for this stuff to roll over the border, and I'm wondering whether it's amazing how little it's rolled over the border.
Well, it's already rolling over the border. I think that what's going on is that Mexico is in a very difficult, maybe impossible position. The United States is asking it to eradicate or greatly reduce drug trafficking, and anywhere the U.S. has imposed this solution, the result has been more corruption, more violence. In the past, this included Colombia, Peru, other countries in the region that were easily ignored, but you can't do that with Mexico. Mexico is our largest trading partner. We're trying to promote democracy there and so on. Those are valid and very legitimate goals, but U.S. counter-drug policy in the region undercuts those priorities, and so it really works at cross purposes. It is undermining the institutions of civil society and democracy itself by creating this terrible violence, and I think that we can lay the blame on the drug war itself.
The comparison isn't a perfect one, but a Plan Mexico, like Plan Colombia, isn't on the menu, you're saying, because the situations are different and the countries are different.
Well, actually, there is a Plan Merida, which is modeled on Plan Colombia. And I think this is part of the problem. Under Calderon, in the last couple of years, he really has upped the war against the drug cartels, and that's why we've seen, just in the last 2 years, some 10,000 murders happening in Mexico. This is a gigantic increase compared to previous years.
And so you find the migration traffic and the drug traffic merging. And I think it's been, while we think we're making ourselves safer by tightening down the border, what we've really done is consolidate organized crime.
And pushed the migrants into the arms of the drug cartels?
That's right, yeah.
It's unfortunate that these two issues are being linked, even if this is happening, and I do think that this is increasingly happening, because most of the immigrants that are coming in from Mexico have nothing to do with drugs. They're coming here to work, to contribute to the U.S., to their families back home, and so on. And so, at least in the public discussion, we're starting to see this image, once again, a sort of anti-immigrant image where they're tainted with the drug war and drug trafficking. There's no question that it's been the intensification of the drug war which has led to this new upsurge in arms and so on. But even if you believe this 90% figure, and even if you believe somehow that the United States is going to be able to seal off the border and reduce significantly or eliminate completely the traffic of arms from the U.S. to Mexico, it is a complete illusion to believe that that will somehow handicap the drug traffickers in Mexico, and they will not have access to these kinds of weapons from anywhere else in the world. And by all indications, most of those arms are already coming from almost all other places of the world, and not the United States. The 90% figure is 90% of the traceable arms that the Mexican government has gotten its hands on, but it's actually confiscated 29,000 arms in the past couple of years. Only a fraction of those have been traced to the United States, 17% actually. So you're having arms coming from Guatemala, from South Korea, from all parts of the world, just as is the case in every place where you have drug traffickers, whether it be Colombia or the Middle East or other parts of the world.
Well, Ian Vasquez, it was considered something of a watershed when the Secretary of State said openly that the problem was being created by American demand for drugs. Does any response that addresses that demand have a shot at working?
I'm not sure, but I do agree that this is one of those areas where the U.S. is responsible for creating this massive problem. As long as there is this demand for drugs and the model remains prohibition, you're going to have these huge black market premiums which create all of the incentives that result in corruption and violence and the kinds of things that we've seen. The U.S. now has been fighting a domestic war on drugs for over 3 decades, and it has failed utterly. So We have tried all sorts of things, and they haven't worked. And this is one of the reasons why Mexico is in such a difficult position, because largely this problem is out of its control, and yet the U.S. puts pressure on it to fight this drug war. Unless and until the U.S. decriminalizes, at the very least, this problem is not going to go away in the U.S. or in Mexico.
Where is Cato on prohibition? I mean, do they think that part of the problem is the fact that this is criminal activity, and that something about taking drugs would change if you lifted the criminal bans on it?
Look, we, and I will speak for myself on this, believe that prohibition is working at cross purposes, and especially when you have consenting adults that aren't directly harming a third party, they should have the right to consume the drug that they want. We believe that drug abuse is a problem, but it should be dealt with as a social problem, not as a criminal problem. We don't deal with alcohol in the same way. We used to, and we prohibited it, and we saw the same results in the 1920s and early 30s. And this is exactly what happens with drugs. It's not clear what would happen if you decriminalized drugs as far as use. Maybe it would go up, maybe it would go down. But what can be said with pretty much certainty is that it would be an enormous harm reduction measure, because you would see all of these pathologies that are created by the drug war, the violence, the corruption, the deaths from overdoses of drugs, all of them would go down, as we've seen in countries like Portugal. We just released a study on drug decriminalization in Portugal. Portugal has 7 years of this experience now, so you can study it. And all of these indicators, including usage and deaths and so on, have actually decreased compared to other European countries where they actually continue to criminalize and prosecute the drug war. So I do think that ending drug prohibition is an enormous harm reduction policy.
Ian, what about the U.S. side of the border? Wouldn't this strengthen the hand of people who want to see a military approach? Don't the problems in Mexico make the bitter pill of militarizing the border a little easier to swallow?
Unfortunately, yes, I think, and those arguments are being made, and I think it would be unfortunate. It'll certainly increase tensions between the United States and Mexico, but really, militarization is the logical consequence of the drug war, isn't it? As problems get out of hand, the logical result is the only one who can solve our problems is the military, and certainly that is what we've seen in Mexico. This is problematic for a country that we're trying to do everything we can to promote democracy and civil society and so on. But Mexico is also a very special country in Latin America, because it is one of those countries where the military traditionally has not played a prominent role in politics since the revolution earlier in the 20th century, unlike in the rest of Latin America where you always had military coups and so on. What this drug war is doing is bringing the military into a role that the Mexican government has specifically designed for it not to be good at. The Mexican government under the PRI and since the revolution specifically designed the military to have its role but not be very effective. It shouldn't do.
But it's a clean institution
now,
in the way that police were not.
And that's why they're bringing it in. And I'm afraid that as we've seen in other cases, it'll lead to all sorts of problems. This is very problematic for, I believe, Mexican democracy. But I don't think that it will be effective